Welcome to Fright Fix.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Are you alive?
I'm there. I'm alive. I'm ready and I don't know how to say the name of this film. Is it Nocebo?
I think it's Nocebo because I think it's from the family of words that sound like placebo. So I
That's very
think
technical.
it's
I like that.
I think it's Nocebo, unless it's like Italian and it's meant to be like Nocebo or something like that.
True. Well, I do actually have the definition for it. It says nocebo, a detrimental effect on health produced by psychological or psychosomatic factors such as negative expectation of treatments or prognosis, which sounds like it lives within the placebo family. So I think you're right.
Yeah. So with placebo, a placebo is like when you take a fake medicine or something,
Yeah, and it gives
and
you the same
yeah, and it makes you go, oh yeah, I
results.
feel better now.
Yeah,
So a nocebo, I'm guessing, is the opposite of that. You're ill and you take a medicine to make you feel better, but the medicine makes you even worse.
yeah. Or not even just taking the medicine, but you get worse because of psychological factors rather than
Yeah.
getting better because of psychological factors. So,
Hmm.
which is what this film's about. So
Yes,
nocebo.
it's an interesting concept. Thanks for making me watch this.
I know it just came up and I saw Eva Green on the Netflixy thing,
Yeah.
and Mark Strong, and I thought, oh, good two actors. Let's try it out. So yeah, I'm excited to hear what you think about it.
What makes it's a very strange combination because this is a Irish Filipino production.
Yes, very unique.
Yeah. What did I think of this movie? I thought it was a very slow burn,
Mm-hmm.
and it felt like a TV drama rather than like a
Yeah,
cinematic movie type thing.
it felt quite. I don't know if it was low budget because it was quite high quality, but it felt low budget. It felt like
Yeah.
it wasn't going to be a box office hit. It was more of an independent film type feel to it.
Yeah. It's very small scale. It almost feels like it was like maybe like a play or something, and a
Mm.
play that's been adapted into a movie. I mean, generally, I thought the performances were okay. I mean, Mark Strong wasn't really given a huge amount to do, and Eva Green kind of like carries the movie with her performance.
Yeah,
But I don't know if I liked this movie, to be totally honest.
yeah. I mean, it's a tricky one because I think it's a very unique concept for a film.
Yeah.
We haven't done anything. So a really quick summary of it is that there's a woman who's played by, is it Evergreen? No,
Evergreen. I don't know. Yeah, it's one of
because
those.
that would
Yeah.
be really cool if that was her name, Evergreen.
Evergreen. Oh, I
Like
didn't even
an
think of that. I didn't
it
even think
might
of that.
be it might be, but now I can't say it without smiling. But her name's Christine, and she's like a highfalutin fashion designer for children's clothes. And there she gets really ill over the course of this film, and nobody really knows what's wrong with her. Her husband, Mark Strong, thinks that it might be psychosomatic, and they can't figure it out. And a woman comes knocking at their door and says, I'm here to help you. And Christine's like, I can't remember that. But she lets her in anyway because she thinks, oh, because I've been really ill, I've probably just forgotten. And over the course of this film, you find out that, massive spoiler alert, Diana, who's the woman who mysteriously showed up, is the mother of a child who was killed in a factory that produced the clothes that Christine creates for children. And it was actually Christine who forced that factory to lock their doors so that the workers couldn't leave, and that started and then a fire started, and Diana's daughter was killed in it. And this film is about revenge for Diana and her daughter, and it uses a lot of Filipino culture, I suppose, and history and spirituality around the way that Diana is pretending to help Christine with getting better, but is actually making her worse. And the film kind of follows their relationship and the way that they are together. So I think the premise of it is really interesting. I like revenge as a film. I think that it's quite especially when we don't grow to like, well, I didn't grow to like Christine as a character. She was always quite hard to like because you know that she's mean and she steps on people to get her way. she is kind of the bad character, even though she's the victim in this. And so I wasn't mad at seeing her like suffer almost.
Or get roasted at the end.
Well, yeah, or get roasted at the end, but
yeah.
So in that sense, it was an interesting watch. I think the issue for me with this film is that it kind of didn't. The first act felt like it was really building up to something, and it was getting creepier. It was like, what's going on? We're trying to figure things out. And then it just kind of doesn't go any further than that. It just carries on at the same tempo. And once it's revealed who Diana is, it kind of loses its impact, and it's not really scary after that. I don't know how you felt.
Yeah, I mean, touching upon what you said about Christina being a likable character or not, like I think that's where the film kind of falls flat a little bit. Like she was pretty dislikable from the very beginning, and Diana comes in, and Diana is like mega creepy at the beginning of the film. Like she's just a very kind of just made me feel very awkward. But then as the movie progresses and we see a bit more of Diana's backstory, I started rooting for her a bit more as the film progressed, and less so for Christine. But it would have been cool if it was like if Christina was made out to be a super likable character, and you wanted to survive, you're on her side. And then at the in the third part of the story, we could the revelation could come, and then suddenly it would be cool if the viewer was made to feel guilty for rooting for Christina.
So then it's revealed later on that she was actually the one who told them to lock the doors, and that would be good, because we kind of know from the beginning that she's done something terrible, because she gets a phone call and then all the like health issues start, and you can tell that she's guilty about something from the beginning. But I like that idea that we feel sorry for her and we don't know what's wrong, and then suddenly we feel duped into liking her, and then that would make it so much more impactful.
Yeah, it's just that I thought the concept for the story was actually okay, because we've not reviewed anything quite like this before, at least in the story. And the visuals were great, but I just felt like it wasn't directed cleverly. Like there was no real intellectualness in there, where it could have been. Like all the puzzle pieces were there for it to happen.
Yeah,
I mean, some bits were pretty good, but I felt like in more capable hands, it just felt like the script needed another draft, where someone came in and kind of like just rearranged a few of the pieces just to make it a bit more intellectually stimulating. Yeah,
a little bit more subtle, I think, because one of the things that I wrote down was that, like I said, the plot line is pretty obvious. And it does, like you say, it doesn't make you stop and think or change your mind about something, because you kind of have the same feeling all the way through. We know that fast fashion is bad. We know that it's terrible for the people who work in those factories. And we're just kind of given a chance to reaffirm that throughout the film, rather than challenge the way that we think, which I think you've given me such a good idea for a film on this kind of topic, which would be that you think that the film is about somebody making their way in the fashion industry, and then you kind of get to a point where you think they're really successful and they've done really well, and then you go back and you realize the only reason they got to be successful is because they used fast fashion and they used child labor or exploited labor in other countries. And then you'd be like, that's what real life is like, because we see in the shops the clothes, but we don't know how they're made. We gloss over that. And in this film, I like that it's trying to show that, and I think that the idea of showing these kind of things happening is really important, but a bit of subtlety might have made it more impactful.
I liked I didn't fully understand the whole tick thing throughout the story, but it was only at the end when Diana tells Christina she was a parasite in the Philippines, like trying to essentially making overworking the factory employees, and suddenly that whole tick and metaphor or analogy, whatever it is, suddenly made a bit more sense. And I appreciated it a little bit more once that was kind of revealed. I don't know why I didn't understand it immediately, to be totally honest, but
I think I was the same. And actually I wrote down that I quite like that metaphor. So throughout the film, there's this tick that reappears on Christine and is essentially the reason why she's getting health problems, or we think it's the reason she's getting health problems. And I think for me, it was a metaphor that, Christine is the wealthy country, and she's essentially sucking dry all the the countries in which they force their labor to be in, and just to satisfy their own desires. This is it's I like that as a metaphor. To be honest, the massive tick in the dream creeped me out quite a lot.
I wrote that down as well. It was actually mega gross and scary, and just if there's one takeaway from this movie, it's that scene where Christina is in some kind of sleep paralysis in bed. She can't move, and there's this huge tick the size of a brain, just creepy crawling its way up her chest and everything, and towards her face, and she's just there screaming. Well, she's got her little, what's those breathing apparatus
it's like
called?
A PAP or something like that, like a as far as a something PAP machine.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah.
But for sleep apnea,
one of those things. Yeah, that was definitely 100% the creepiest part. Of that movie.
And it felt, we haven't done many films where we look at animals or insects or anything being the creepy thing. So it was quite interesting to not see like a ghost or a boogeyman climbing up the end of the bed, because you see the covers start slightly pull away from her while she's sleeping, and the first thing I thought was, oh, there's going to be like a ghost or like a something, I'm going to
Oh, bless
sorry.
you.
I could feel that coming for ages. I was trying not to sneeze. But then when the tick appeared, I was like, ooh, that is not what I was expecting. And it is very creepy. And I think there's a certain fear that people have of things that are bigger than they're supposed to be. And I can't remember what it's called. It's like a phobia when you see something. So when you see the bones of a whale and they're absolutely massive and it's bigger than you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
It's called something. I think it triggers that a little bit with the tick because it's so massive and it's not supposed to be that big, and it freaks you out. But I did like that.
Yeah. I think generally with the story, I figured out the end twist by the midpoint of the movie.
Did you?
Yeah. With especially because at the beginning she's like, Diana gets the phone call that says, "What bodies? There's loads of bodies."
Oh,
they're pulling out bodies.
That twist. Yeah.
And then I think we see Diana working in a factory, and I think that's around about the midpoint of the movie, or something, or maybe just before then, because obviously in the flashbacks you see Diana has a kid, and then when she's working for Christina, obviously she doesn't have a kid.
So something's happened.
I don't know. I felt like it was all fairly predictable
that was definitely. I think the thing I didn't predict was the end with Bob's, that she would become the next. I don't know. I can't remember what it was called, but I think it must be an old kind of Filipino. I don't know if it's like a tale or lore of some sort, but that you can become this. It's quite ambiguous on what it is, and I'm sure if I watched it again, I might get it a bit more. But this little baby chicken kind of like goes into Diana when she's younger, and then she can. Yeah, she has some sort of like connection to the world, to nature.
Yeah. So with Diana's backstory in the Philippines, some old lady comes and somehow ends up in Diana's house, and I think the old lady's seen as some kind of, I don't want to say witch or something, but some kind of magic-y type person. And when that magic person dies, they launch a chick out of their mouth, and then whoever happens to be in the room when this person dies, the chick flies into their mouth, and then they take on the witch powers. And
it was quite ambiguous if it was good or bad. It was kind of like, if it was a good thing or a bad thing, because she could then connect with nature, but also she was kind of shunned from the community a bit.
I never got the impression it was like it made the person bad or evil or anything. It was just, I think people in the community probably shunned her because they just didn't get it, or because to be honest with you, there was no point where I felt like Diana was being evil.
No, she's not being unreasonable for what happened to her.
I mean, the revenge kind of thread holds up, because sometimes people are just malicious just for the sake of it, but at no point did I ever feel Diana was like that. So I think Christina just kind of got what
she deserved.
In a weird
what we
way.
Knew from the beginning. I guess the secondary plot line of Bob's. So Bob's is Christina and Felix, who's Mark Strong's daughter, who has a kind of on and off again relation. No, that sounds like they're together. No, she doesn't like Diana when she comes, and then she becomes like a mother to her by the end. And Diana ends up dying in front of Bob's, and Bob's then has the little chicken thing that gets into her mouth. and she becomes the next version of this what I don't know what it would be called, but anyway, magic person, yeah. And so I guess, I mean, I didn't see that coming, but also I didn't really care, and I know that's
by the time it happened, it was kind of like, yeah, you kind of checked out a little bit.
Yeah, like the thing that you knew was going to happen has happened. Diana's got her revenge on Christine. It's kind of the end. Like, that's what they're leading up to, and then they just yeah.
I mean, trust the child to be the one who screws everything up. Like,
I know.
Yeah. So essentially, because of the kid, the daughter. I mean, by that point, the daughter had already somehow had her relationship with her mum and dad fractured in the story by that point. But then again, she's a little tiny child. She doesn't know, like,
yeah.
So she's manipulated by Diana into doing her bidding and whatnot. And I found how Mark Strong was kind of taken out of the story was a bit weak, to be honest. Like, they really didn't give him anything to do. And
I was so surprised, because you'd think, he was the biggest name in this film, I'd say. And he kind of doesn't really his role is to be the opposite of what Christine says. So, the voice of reason, or basically just say whatever the audience might be thinking.
He is ridiculously rational in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, especially, are you
sure we should let this random lady into our house?
Yeah, because normally in movies, characters always make decisions where the audience wants to scream at them.
Especially horror films. Don't go in that house.
Yeah, but he basically calls everything as it is throughout the story, and he is so reasonable. And especially the bit where Eva Green kind of starts accusing him of stealing her medicine.
Yeah.
And he's basically explaining the truth, in a very calm and collected way. And Eva Green is just in the corner, like, overacting her heart out.
Yeah.
Their performances were like the polar opposites to each other. Like, Eva was so, like, she was at like 11 throughout the movie, whereas Mark Strong was very kind of just very neutral and very calm.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, her performance was the only thing that really, not the only thing, because there was a few captivating things about it, but it kept the story going, I think. You could see the illness in her.
Yes.
And you could see her trying to put herself back together. And I think if they had chosen somebody that wasn't such an emotive actor, this wouldn't have worked, and it would have been way worse. But I think she carries a lot of the psychological aspects of this film, because there's a the nocebo itself, the idea that it is creating your own negative health issues through your own mind. You have to be able to be really emotive to do that. And I do like how Diana, even though her character doesn't give the actor a lot to work with, because she is supposed to be quite subdued and quite calm, but in a kind of creepy way, I think it works well against Christine being the opposite, which is highly strung, very stressed, and looking very, very ill. You almost have to have the yin and yang. And I think it's a shame that Mark Strong's character couldn't have been something else. Like, you've got Diana, who's one side of the coin, and then Christine, who's the other side of the coin. And then they could have used Mark Strong. He should have been the voice of reason, but then, like you say, he just kind of doesn't appear in the climax of the film. No. He comes back after Christine's dead, and it's like, couldn't he have come in a bit earlier and tried to, like, I don't know, convince Diana that it's not worth it or something? I don't know. Like, it just felt like he'd missed his entrance by the end.
I think generally with this movie, I think what it comes down to is the story was okay. The script wasn't great, but also I think Eva Green had to kind of overact her heart out.
Yeah.
To kind of counterbalance lazy direction, I think.
Yeah. It's like the actor has to put in more work to compensate for it. I agree. And it's a shame, because I think, like I said, I think the message of this film is really, really strong. And I think it's something that we should have in these kind of films, because sometimes watching something through a fictional lens is easier to grapple with than maybe watching a documentary about forced labor or fast fashion. That can be quite intense, and it might be something that people don't tune into. But when you have a film that really delves into pretty serious stuff, but does it in a way that makes you want to watch the film at the same time, you can reach an audience that you might not have ever been able to. And if they'd done this really well, this could have been really impactful. You know, like even at the end, they have that end credit that says about, I think it says justice for all Kentex workers. And I looked it up, and in 2015, a fire broke out in Kentex is like a slippers brand in Venezuela, Valenzuela in the Philippines. And 74 people were killed in the fire. And it was the third worst fire instance in Philippine history. That is a really impactful reason why you should make a film. And I think it could have been a way for us to learn about these things and maybe grapple with our own guilt a little bit. But when you put it in a film that, it feels like it's trying to do a lot, but then it never actually finishes it properly. You know, is it a horror? Is it a psychological thriller? Is it a fantasy? Is it social commentary? Is it independent film that's all about metaphor? It's hard to figure out.
I think especially when you're dedicating a movie to a real life tragedy, I think this movie, if you stripped out all the mystical, magical parts of this movie and just focused more on the actual human story, I think it would have still, the story of revenge or whatever. I think it would have still been a good concept or a good movie. Like, so Christina dealing with guilt and Diana having her kind of revenge aspect, and I think there was still potential for there to be something good there. But
I think that might have been better, actually. I can imagine that being a really interesting film, like you say, about the way that humans interact with each other. And it could still be a horror film, but has less of the, like you say, mystical elements to it that potentially take away from the plot or make the plot a little bit too confusing, maybe.
Yeah, I think generally, if you wanted to serve that tragedy or make something to bring awareness to that, I think an entirely different movie, which is, like a movie inspired by the events of that tragedy, would have probably brought more attention to that tragedy than using that tragedy as a metaphor in a movie, or kind of it's not metaphor, that's the wrong word, but loosely inspired by or loosely based on.
It's almost diluting the impact of telling that story in itself, which is the thing that I guess a lot of directors or writers struggle with, is how do we talk about something that's really serious and really real while also making it digestible. And we see films all the time that tackle really, really intense issues but manage to do it really well, because like you say, the plot of a film has to be really, really sharp and impactful, and if it's not, then you're kind of missing the point anyway.